Hello, dear viewers. Support me by subscribing to my channel and share my video if you like it. And also, make sure you comment your thought. Now let's start the video. I looked at Bella in amusement when she came to English class late and flushed. Mike had snubbed her by looking away when their eyes met briefly, and I saw that she felt slightly guilty for rejecting him. But as both he and Eric still walked us to our other classes, she let it go. Mike was quickly going back to his old self and talking animatedly about the beach trip being possible as the weather was supposed to be good this weekend. I knew that, of course, and felt a little disconcerted at going to the reservation as they had banned the Cullens from coming, but I blatantly remembered that I wasn't technically a Cullen or even a vampire. I wanted to laugh at myself for having gotten so used to hanging out with them that I thought I was one of them, even subconsciously. Bella tried to match Mike's enthusiasm and failed miserably, not that he seemed to notice. I didn't really focus much on any of them, letting the morning pass by in a blur until lunch when I could be with Jasper. Today there'd be only Emmett and Rosia with him, as Edward would sit by himself. Jazz and I would be cementing our plans for when I went over to his house, meeting his adoptive parents, Carlisle and Esme, and finding some privacy by letting Jasper take me somewhere in the forest. We were also going to unabashedly eavesdrop on Edward and Bella's supposedly private conversation. Not that I needed to, as I already knew what they were going to say to each other. As usual, I didn't bother eating much during lunch. I only ever really ate 2 meals a day. Breakfast and dinner, and in between I only ate a few snacks like the bag of banana chips and the milk carton I got today. At first Jasper worried over my lack of appetite, but I assured him I was healthy and it's not like my small body had much of an appetite to sate. There was only so much I could stuff my stomach with before I felt like throwing it back up. I practically skipped to the Cullens' usual table, ignoring Rosie and Emmett's amused looks as I sat squarely on Jasper's lap. Jazz, true to his previous word, didn't seem surprised at all by my familiarity and simply smiled, wrapping his arms around my waist and sitting me more comfortably on his lap, resting his chin on the top of my head. Would you like me to tell you the play-by-play of their conversation? Jasper murmured into my ear. I grinned and looked to where Edward was sitting, beckoning to Bella with a smirk, but I saw the minute twitch of his eye that gave away his irritation at Jasper's question. No need, I replied cheerily as I opened my bag of banana chips. I already know everything they're going to say. Bella's going to make Edward laugh aloud at one point. I frowned as I remembered Edward's response to Bella commenting on the different scenario. What's wrong, darling? I only shook my head and looked pointedly at Edward as Bella settled herself across from him and looked back to my chips with the same frown on my face. It was silent at the table before Jasper seemingly perked at something Edward said. You don't like his reference to hell, Jasper said as more of a statement than a question. I bit into a banana chip a little angrily. Edward is so stupid sometimes, I muttered sullenly to myself. Emmett chuckled at my muttering. He wouldn't be Edward if he wasn't angsting, little sis. I pouted at Emmett, though I was inwardly warmed at his intimate and affectionate term for me. I sniffed. It doesn't matter, Bella will change his mind whether he likes it or not, I said petulantly, making Emmett chuckle. I felt Jasper's smirk against my neck. He's constantly trying to look into your mind for visions of him and Bella, isn't he? Jasper said. I huffed and crossed my arms, leaning back into Jasper sullenly. Edward knows how much I dislike him, trying to see visions I don't want him to, but he thinks it's fine if it involves keeping Bella safe, Emmett finished for me. And his version of keeping Bella safe is staying away from her every chance he gets, but it seems like he changed his mind, so why are you still hiding things from him? He asked curiously, and I felt the worry start anew at his question, readily reciting the Gettysburg Address. I memorized it for a project in middle school. In my head, in order to keep my mind from mainly thinking of what Edward's reaction might be to my visions of Bella being a vampire, or worse, of her getting pregnant and wasting away. I had told Jasper of both our turnings, minus the pregnancies, and he didn't mind, unlike Edward, who thought he was taking Bella's soul because he knew it'd be safer for us in the long run and we'd be able to be together forever. He also wouldn't have the instinctual urge to suck us dry and kill us in the process. Jasper's arms tightened reassuringly around my waist as he sent a wave of calm and warmth to me. I relaxed and smiled, smuggling into his back and sending him my own gratitude as I gave Emmett a carefully hidden, thought-out answer. Because Edward doesn't know what's best for the both of them as much as he thinks he does, and I don't want him doing anything drastically stupid before he's supposed to, if I let him see certain visions I've had, and no, I'm not telling any of you anything. You'll know when it happens, I stated with finality, though I knew my pout and crossing my arms lessened the severity in which I'd said it. The rest of lunch was spent with amiable chatter relating to my visit. I promised to show Rosalie some of the sites I shopped at, and I promised that I would give Emmett some future sports scores so he could win bets against Carlisle. I smiled when Jasper never asked for anything more than my company. My smile widened when Jasper swept me up into his arms and put me down gently, taking my tray from me as the bell rang. Before I could go to class, he grabbed my hand and pulled me against him, leaning down to whisper in my ear. "Skip with me?" he asked. I felt my cheeks heat with joy at the sudden visions I saw of the two of us snuggling in my car, passing the time talking and listening to music. "Of course," I answered warmly, loving his smile as he twined our fingers together and took my bag for me. "What's with the sudden decision?" I asked curiously, as he led us to the parking lot. "I knew you were uneasy about the events that would occur because of blood typing in your class and finally decided that your period would be better spent enjoying yourself with me and relaxing," Jasper replied easily, making my heart warm and my stomach feel fuzzy. "You didn't need to do that, Jazz. Nothing really bad was going to happen," I murmured softly, though I knew he could feel the gratitude I was feeling towards his interference. "I know, but you don't have to be there. You don't have to always observe, Maddie. You don't have to focus so hard on their situation. You told me yourself it would work out for them in the end. Sometimes you should just let things happen and focus on yourself." I felt emotion well in my throat, tightening it as I pressed myself into Jasper, overwhelmed by his concern. "Thanks, Jazz," I managed to choke out without bursting into happy tears. He chuckled and wrapped his arm around me, kissing the top of my head. "Don't worry about it. I'm more than happy to fill the role of distracting you when the occasion calls for it." I giggled and allowed myself to be showered in Jasper's gentle affections as we settled comfortably into my car, deciding that I was going to skip gym as well. I abruptly stopped giggling when I felt Jasper stiffen and growl slightly in annoyance. "What is it, Jazz?" I asked, slightly concerned, as I turned in his embrace to let our chests rest against each other, rather than chest to back like before. "Edward volunteered my services in taking Bella's truck home today, since he's offered to drive her home after her little episode." My eyes widened slightly in realization as I belatedly remembered that it was originally Alice that was supposed to do that job, but pushed it aside and laughed at Jasper's predicament. "Oh, come on, Jazz. Just do him a little favor. He'll owe you." He still didn't look too excited at the prospect of being publicly seen driving that monster, so I gave him a little incentive. I shimmied my way up his chest and slowly wrapped my arms around his neck, closing the distance between our lips and giving him a sweet, lingering chaste kiss. I pulled back only slightly, our noses still lightly brushing as I looked up at him through my lashes. "Please, for me," I whispered breathily to him, saying it as softly and lovingly as possible, letting my affections and warmth for him leak freely into my emotions as well. I resisted the urge to shiver when he did, practically purring when he kissed me, more roughly, more fervently, his teeth nipping lightly at my lower lip for permission. I gave it to him freely and mewled as he explored my pliant mouth without restriction, my own tongue only shyly or slyly in some people's opinions, exploring his own at certain intervals, making him growl in satisfaction and desire each time. He pulled back slowly when I needed to breath, staring unblinkingly as I clung to him, struggling to catch my breath. He cupped one flushed cheek in his hand, my head leaning on it, as I tried to regain my composure, his other wrapped firmly around my waist. "Little minx," Jasper whispered to me fondly, ghosting kisses along my jaw and the features of my face, along my nose, my eyelids, the contours of my cheekbones. I gave him an impish, warm smile. "You don't mind," I told him, my voice still slightly breathy from the passionate kiss. He chuckled and ran his fingers through my short hair. "No, I don't," he replied in agreement. As I expected, neither Bella nor I heard the sound of her truck arriving, but there it was later when Bella and I looked out our windows. I wasn't really concerned about that, my mind occupied by thoughts of my first meeting with my future parents. I was a little worried about Bella and her obsession-aversion towards Edwards, but didn't dwell on it as I knew that my worry was mostly unfounded. Jasper and the others, not Edward, wanted to invite me camping. Not that Rosie said it outright, but she didn't oppose it, which spoke volumes. But I knew that it was a hunting trip, and didn't want them to have to act human when the trip was meant to let them act naturally. So I didn't want to intrude. Later I learned that the outing to La Push was a go. Not that I was surprised, as I had seen it happen, but after that everything was unsurprisingly blank. It was more unnerving than I thought it would be to be unable to see the future. I had lived with the ability all my life and had adapted to being able to know things, to turn things in my favor in the favor of people I cared about. Going in blind was a new experience, as worrying as it was exciting. It had only been 2 years ago that my visions of La Push began to disappear. No doubt thanks to the reappearance of the Cullens and Forks, and so near the reservation. I felt saddened that I'd lose some friends. The group of adolescent boys she'd spent many summers with were my friends, at least until they became tall buff jerks that started to snub me because of their shape-shifting mumbo-jumbo. After the older kids began to phase and join their little exclusive clique, I started to only hang out with Jake, Leah, Seth, Quill, and Embry, and Leah was crossed off the list when soon after Sam changed, he imprinted with Leah's cousin Emily. She was a nightmare to be around after that. Not that I could blame her, but she lashed out at me despite my desire to help and comfort her, only caring for her brother after that and becoming a bitter, no pun intended, bitch. So now the only ones left I could hang around were Jake, Quill, Embry, and Seth, and I was pretty sure that the last 3 wouldn't be at the reserve, at least not from what little I remember of Bella's first visit to La Push in the first book. I wasn't surprised when I woke to seeing the sun, the patch of blue sky refreshing after so many weeks of clouds. Bella was carpooling with me as it was pointless to go separately and I actually knew where to go without looking at directions. Mike and Tyler's cars were already parked there, and there was a group standing in front of Mike's ride, Eric. 2 guys whose names I never bothered remembering, but was sure were in at least one of my classes, and Jessica were there, the last flanked by Angela and Lauren. There were 3 other girls there, one of which I remember Bella almost tripping over before I saved her. The girl didn't seem to care whether it actually happened or not, as she still gave Bella a dirty look and whispered something to Lauren, who in response shook out her hair and eyed Bella scornfully. I resisted the urge to roll my eyes at the girls and frown at the boys. Already my mood for this outing dampening. Not that it was particularly bright to begin with. Mike and Eric seemed the only ones happy to see us, and Angela, but she was more subtle. "You came," Mike called, delighted, "and I said it would be sunny today, didn't I?" "I told you we were coming," Bella reminded him. "We're just waiting for Leah and Samantha, unless you invited someone," Mike added. "Nope," Bella lied lightly, making me wonder whether I should be impressed or worried that she lied so easily when it came to Edward. At least Mike looked satisfied. "Will you ride in my car? It's that or Lee's mom's minivan." "Sure," Bella replied easily, making me smirk as Mike seemed to ignore me completely in favor of Bella. He smiled blissfully. The boy was ridiculously easy to make happy. "You can have shotgun," he promised, forcing me to hold back a scoff of amusement and derision. How old was he again? 5. I sniffed as I hid a smirk at the way Jessica was glowering at the 2. Of course, the numbers worked out in Bella's favor as Lee had brought 2 extra people and I easily asserted the decision that Bella and I could drive down to La Push in my car. It wasn't difficult to assert as it was only 15 minutes to La Push from Fork, and I used to visit all the time during summer. I frowned as I drove since I knew I had been avoiding visiting since I moved here more permanently. I just didn't want to confront the whole shapeshifter. Cullen haters scenarios early, especially since I really liked the Cullens, especially a certain Cullen named Jasper. I also did not want to run into a forward jerk that turned into a dangerous forward jerk after his shift. The regular events that happened after we parked passed by in an uninteresting blur for me, only paying a bit more attention when Mike romantically lit the driftwood fire, enjoying the blue and green fire that crackled from the salted wood. The others stayed away from me, partly because of how antisocial I was when not around the Cullens, and partly because of how intensely I was staring at the fire infinitely more interesting than the petty gossip and pointless chatter that they were engaging in. Even Bella didn't bother my unblinking trance with the fire when she decided to go see the tidal pools with some of the boys. I didn't bother reacting as I knew the worst thing that happened to her was her tripping on the trail. Focusing so intently on the fire helped me to not outwardly react when a group of local teens came to socialize. Most of the Twilight teens that recognized me knew not to bother me, but for different reasons than the Forks kids. But one jerkwad had no issues breaking me out of my self-induced entertaining trance. Well, if it isn't the little pink pixie. Aren't you usually a summer fairy? I sent a chilling death glare to the tall jerkwad that had cast a shadow over my figure and distracted me, hating that I had to crane my neck up so high for the jerkwad who only gave a mean grin at seeing my glare. "Paul," I spat out with all the disgust and venom I could muster, which was quite a lot. He seemed to realize that too, and didn't seem to like my obvious hatred for him. "Why don't you quit playing, little girl, and finally let me make a woman out of you," he said, leaning down threateningly and making me jerk back in revulsion. The day I need a pig on steroids to prove to myself that I'm a woman will be the day pigs fly and I don't see you soaring through the skies anytime soon. "Porky," I all but hissed at him, not yelling, but not needing to get my point across. I stiffened with anxiety and resignation when I heard a low growl rumble from Paul's barrel chest, the sound coming out from bared teeth as he began to shake ever so slightly. Okay, bad idea in retrospect to anger the shapeshifter with so many people around, but I was banking on the safety measure. "Paul," a sharp, commanding voice intoned. We both looked to the oldest looking guy in the Twilight group. I held back a sigh of relief as I vaguely recognized Sam. "Stop messing around," he ordered the towering jerkwad, said jerkwad, straightened, growling a little in defiance before scowling, his body no longer shaking as he made his way back to the Twilight group. My small hands were tightened into fists, shaking in rage, and admittedly, fear. Paul had always been a jerkwad, a sexist pig jerkwad, but he had been manageable before 2 years ago. Back then, he wasn't entirely impervious to my more violent rejections, i.e. punching him in the face, neck, and stomach, elbowing him in the same places, as well as stomping his feet, kicking him in the shin, behind the knee, and gonads. But since he became a jerkwad on shape-shifting steroids, I couldn't reject his advances for fear of harming myself. Not that the situation that could follow was any better. Now that I couldn't violently reject him, I was vulnerable to his more assertive and touchy, and very much unwanted, advances. I was in danger of being taken against my will, and the only thing stopping him was Sam. That worried me. Sam wasn't exactly Paul's babysitter, and as much as he probably wanted, or maybe didn't want. He's a jerkwad, he couldn't keep an eye on Paul all the time. The only reason I came with Bella today was because of the sole fact that I knew Sam would be here as well, knowing that meeting Paul was inevitable if I accompanied Bella. My ruined, horrible mood was lightened when Jacob immediately came over to cheer me up, engaging me in a conversation of catch-up. Not that we needed to do much of it, as it hadn't been that long. I was basically just an amusing paperweight until Bella came and captured his attention. Despite my being there, his crush towards her hadn't changed. It disappointed me, but I hoped it had to do with that ridiculous theory that he would imprint with Bella's daughter in the future. It made sense for him to feel close to her, and protective of her, when one of the eggs in her uterus was going to be Jacob's future imprint. My nose wrinkled, disturbed by my own thoughts, as Jacob finally engaged Bella in conversation when she came back, reminding her who he was. I was debating whether I should ditch and wait for Bella in my car for this whole event to end. But I was too afraid of Paul slipping by Sam to harass me, or God's forbid, do something much worse to me. I let myself zone out while staring at the fire again, my emotions not nearly as calm as before. My emotions only grew more hectic when I thought of Jasper's reaction to Paul's attitude towards me. I had failed to mention it to him as it wasn't something I liked remembering, but just thinking about how he might react had me frowning deeply in concern. Obviously, I was relieved when I noticed the rain clouds rolling in, waiting patiently for Bella after most of the others already scattered back to their homes or their rides home. The ride home was quiet, not only because Bella had just discovered that the Cullens were vampires, but because I was contemplating my own problems, namely Jasper. There was no Paul and I. That wasn't what I was worried about. It was how angry Jasper would get should I tell him about it. I already had visions of him breaking the treaty and crossing the border secretly in order to kill Paul. Others of him struggling against Edward or Emmett when I told him after school, and his whole family getting in the way when I told him at his house. The third seemed the safest, as it was the one where he would not threaten the treaty and calm down the quickest, but I was still unsure of telling him at all. I already knew, though, that not telling him and letting him find out on his own would be worse. My accompanying visions of said scenario only cemented my thoughts. One thing was clear, however. Talking to Jasper was necessary. And not just about Paul, but things that were going to happen more recently, like Edward spying on Bella and our soon-to-be trip to Port Angeles. Jasper really needed to know that last one, if only to make sure Edward doesn't put their secret in danger by killing them all, though I worried that Jasper would do the same when he discovers that I'm going to be with Bella to ensure that the worst doesn't happen. I prepared the taser and pepper spray that Charlie got me and everything. Yeah, Jasper and I needed to talk soon. I didn't actually have any nightmares, but I knew Bella did. It was part of her whole Edward is a vampire realization, and I love him anyways. Conclusion. I found reason to excuse myself from the house. Hanging out with Angela as going to Jasper's would be too conspicuous at the moment, so I could avoid Bella's introspection and her silent investigation of vampires. It made me pout when I couldn't use the time to go out on a date with Jasper. The sun was still out and Charlie wouldn't approve of me going out after hours. But Angela made up for it and our friendship grew stronger. I even sat next to her at Mike's table voluntarily to talk with her, since again, the Cullens were gone, rather than eat my food in my car listening to my music and relaxing. Jasper still found a way to cheer me up even without being there, as he sent me cute texts, and by cute I mean he sent me his very military-like reports of Edward's activity, which I found cute. I heard how he was glad I prompted him to do this as he had to calm Edward down when he saw Mike tuck a strand of hair behind Bella's ear and then get rid of the tree he had dismembered to get rid of evidence. He was even about to interfere when Edward jumped down to a dozing Bella in our backyard while I was with Angela, but I reminded him that he didn't need to do that, just observe. He still seemed tense about the whole thing, but he trusted my judgment and preferred observing to not having known what was happening at all. He made me smile when he texted his last report, but then sent me another immediately after that was much more normal. Can't wait to see you. It was simple, but it made my heart warm all the same. Jazz, you need to follow Edward to Port Angeles, I whispered with a frown, my brows coming together. I felt his arms tighten around my waist, before he shifted us until I was loosely straddling him so I could face him. What's wrong? He asked, no doubt feeling my scattered emotions over what I knew would happen. Something's going to happen. And I need you to be there, to make sure Edward doesn't do something dangerous, I said carefully, though I frowned when I thought I didn't say it carefully enough. Did I give too much away? Should I have phrased it differently? What is Edward going to do? Jasper asked seriously. I hesitated, but only briefly. Nothing I would consider personally wrong, but I'm not even sure if he's going to do anything. You'd just be there as insurance. Again. He frowned playfully at that, as that's how I'd phrased him when I asked him to tail Edward when he stalked Bella. Why do I get the feeling that I'm becoming your personal spy? He muttered. I smiled warmly at him, my emotions welling and warming with affection, as well as I wrapped my arms around his neck. Even if that's more or less true, you know that's hardly the reason I tell you things, I murmured back softly. His eyes softened in response, and he leaned down to give me a chaste kiss, pressing our foreheads together. I know. We stayed silent and content for a while before I spoke again. You're going to want to be there, I whispered. He looked at me intently, patiently waiting for more. Well, it might be worse if you're there, but I trust your self-control, and I'm sure you won't let your emotions get the better of you, I finished, my voice soft but resolute. Though Jasper didn't know what was going to happen, he could no doubt feel my nervous energy, my worry, and the sliver of fear in the nearly impossible event that either he or Edward would fail, and the consequences that would follow would not be stopped in time. He unwrapped his arms from around my waist to gently cup my face in his hands, dipping down to give me a long kiss. You're my first priority, Maddie, he murmured against my lips, making my frame shudder against his. My hands clenched into fists on his back, stretching his shirt, not that he cared. That's what I'm hoping for, I replied with a worried smile. The day of was uneventful, the usual school routine, sans the Cullens, and then rushing back home to prepare for the Port Angeles outing. I quickly shed out of my gothic clothes and pulled on a casual, embellished striped hooded pullover shirt and black for Rockstar super skinny jeans. After securely tying on my black Vans, I dumped the school stuff out of my Jack the Ripper bag and carefully replaced it with my self-defense stuff and casual things like my wallet, a hat, and the box cutter knife I had taken from my art supplies. You could never have too much insurance. Unlike Bella, who seemed to become more excited as we got further out of town limits, I felt the growing sense of dread knotting uncomfortably in my stomach. I knew that things would more than likely work out, but it was just that small niggling of fear of the worst that kept me from relaxing to any degree, only enough to act normally. The only thing that brought me comfort was the single text I got from Jasper right after school ended. I'll watch over you. Jess drove much faster than Dad, so we made it to Port Angeles by 4. This was the first time since I dragged Bella on a shopping spree in Phoenix that I've gone shopping with the girls. I never really bothered making close friends with anyone in Phoenix as I thought little of the teen social structure and the existence of it to begin with. And that seemed to bother every teen that even considered befriending me when I made that clear to everyone. The only ones I bothered getting close to were the people I knew would stay in the majority of my human life that wasn't family, namely the Quillettes, since I had only recently met the Cullens. Even though this was my first girls' night out in Forks, I could have gone without it for the rest of my existence, honestly. It would have been much nicer to just shop with Bella as she was a similar shopper to me. Find what you're looking for, try it on, buy it, and leave. I'd also prefer shopping with Jasper as I have yet to do it, and I know it'd be fun. Angela's the only best friend I've made in this new life, Bella not counting because she's my sister, Jasper because he's my boyfriend, and Rosie because we'd never be better than good friends. I knew beforehand that I wasn't going to enjoy this, if only for the nervous energy that was building with the suspense of the event I knew was going to occur tonight, but knowing that I was going to dislike the outing seemed to prepare me to appear at least complacent with the current situation as the girls listened, and therefore forced me to listen to whiny rock songs while Jessica jabbered on about the boys they hung out with. I ignored their ramblings, not offering any info when Jessica tried to subtly, or not so subtly, needle info out of me on the subject of Jasper and I's apparent relationship. I refrained from sighing in relief when Jessica drove straight to the one big department store in town. The dance was billed as semi-formal, and the girls weren't exactly sure what that meant. I resisted the urge to roll my eyes at that. Both Jessica and Angela seemed surprised and almost disbelieving when Bella told them she'd never been to a dance in Phoenix and that I'd been to them all. "I thought you said you'd never had a boyfriend," Angela half-stated, half-questioned curiously. I shrugged as what I told her was true, and I wasn't surprised that Bella came to my defense when she saw Jessica about to possibly start something. She didn't. Whenever a dance came around, a bunch of guys always asked her to the dance. Most of them weren't exactly interested in dating her, Bella said with a frown, making the other two frown as well. But Maddie always seemed to know which guys were sincere and which guys only wanted to get under her clothes and always said yes to a nice guy. They were always happy when she said yes, but they always seemed to somehow know that going to the dance with her didn't mean that she was going to date them. The guys she was escorted to dances to always became her friends and ended up getting their own girlfriends when Maddie played matchmaker. Bella said, making the other two girls look at me in awe, not that I cared. I was looking in the window, bored. "What about you?" Jessica asked Bella. "Didn't you ever go with a boyfriend or something?" Jessica asked dubiously as we walked through the front doors of the store. Really, Bella tried to convince her, not wanting to confess to her dancing problems. "I've never had a boyfriend or anything close. I didn't go out much." "Why not?" Jessica demanded, starting to tick me off with how nosy and rude she was being. "No one asked me," Bella answered honestly. "She looked skeptical. "People ask you out here," she reminded her. "And you tell them no." We were in the juniors section now, the girls scanning the racks for dress-up clothes. I looked as well, but rather than look for wearable clothes, I looked for clothes that could be changed or touched up with other materials. I liked to design or fancy up clothes that I buy at regular stores, as most of the clothes I buy for immediate wear comes from specific websites or upper-class stores, both more expensive than regular casual clothing. "Well, except for Tyler," Angela amended quietly, making me snap my head in her direction. "Excuse me," Bella and I asked in unison, making the two look at us in mild surprise, as it was one of the few times that they'd seen us act anything like twins. Bella had gasped at the news while I could feel my brows point downwards in an angry vul shape. I had forgotten that little piece of information from the book, and remembering it now only made me more angry, as Bella was my sister. "Tyler told everyone he's taking you to prom," Jessica informed Bella with suspicious eyes. "He said what?" Bella and I again said in unison, though while Bella sounded like she was choking, my own words were a quiet hiss of anger. "I told you it wasn't true," Angela murmured to Jessica. Bella was silent, no doubt shocked and irritated at the news while I was furious. I wasn't ashamed to say that I was a proud feminist. All those jerkwads that claimed me a feminazi or taking things too seriously, be damned and bragging about taking my sister on a date without asking her consent. First was a huge no for me. How dare that empty-headed pig try to use gossip and peer pressure to get Bella to go to the dance with him. I fumed silently as the others looked through the dress racks. They knew I was only here for Bella after all, but they also knew that I had a good taste for fashion, despite my preferred style, and therefore seemed to look forward to my criticism, if I chose to give it. "That's why Lauren doesn't like you," Jessica giggled while they pawed through the clothes. I growled under my breath at that. Let's not even mention that harpy, blaming it on the new girl, rather than getting mad at her empty-headed crush for trying to go out with said new girl. Sickening. Bella ground her teeth. Do you think that if I ran him over with my truck, he would stop feeling guilty about the accident? That he might give up on making amends and call it even? I rolled my eyes at Bella's naivete. Maybe, Jessica snickered. If that's why he's doing this. The dress selection obviously wasn't large, but the two of them managed to find a few things to try on. Bella and I sat on a low chair just inside the dressing room, by the three-way mirror, trying to control our fuming. Jessica was torn between two dresses, neither of which I myself would wear, but regardless would work for the event and for Jessica. The blue would work better as it's less formal, and I told her as much. Bella also pointed out how it would play up the eyes. Angela chose a pale pink dress that brought out lighter highlights in her hair and emphasized the innocent aura she seemed to have around her. They returned the other dresses to the racks, the whole process much faster than similar outings Bella and I had gone on, part of it no doubt because of the limited choices. I was somewhat dreading the shoes and accessories, as it would be when Bella asked Angela awkward questions about the Cullens, and if there was something I disliked, it was awkward. Angela, Bella began hesitantly. I decidedly distracted myself with some jewelry on display, on the counter despite my disinterest in purchasing them. Yes, she replied distractedly, obviously busy with the shoes she was trying on. I like those. My nail accidentally tapped against the glass when I heard Bella chicken out, but neither gave the small sound any notice. I think I'll get them, though they'll never match anything but that one dress, she mused. Oh, go ahead. They're on sale, Bella encouraged. Angela smiled at that. Angela? Seemed like Bella was trying again. Is it normal for the Cullens, Bella kept her eyes on the shoes, to be out of school a lot? Bella failed miserably in her attempt to sound nonchalant, and I found myself having to make an effort not to roll my eyes at her. Yes, when the weather is good, they go backpacking all the time. Even the doctor. They're all real outdoorsy. I resisted the urge to snort. Rosilly, outdoorsy. The thought made me want to laugh. Bella was probably relieved that Angela hadn't questioned her on her strange inquiry, unlike Jessica, who would have practically interrogated her. Oh, Bella let the subject drop as Jessica returned to show off her jewelry choices. After purchasing everything, they planned to go to dinner at a little Italian restaurant on the boardwalk, but the shopping didn't take as long as they expected, obviously. Bella told them that she would meet them at the restaurant in an hour rather than accompany them to walk down to the bay. I jumped at the chance to go with her, despite what I knew would happen, and not because I felt protective, but because I never liked hanging out with Jessica. While Angela was my best friend, Jessica was simply too off-putting for me. Besides, I preferred a bookstore to a pointless short walk anyways. The two were willing to come with us, but Bella encouraged them to have fun. I stayed silent, and that in its own was an urge for them to do the same. Thankfully, they knew me well enough to interpret it correctly. They walked off to the car, chattering happily, while Bella and I headed to the direction Jessica had pointed out. We had no trouble finding the bookstore. Not because I already knew where it was, it just wasn't hard to find. I knew beforehand that it wasn't the type of bookstore that Bella was looking for. This was definitely more up my alley. The windows displayed crystals, dream catchers, and books about spiritual healing. Bella didn't even go inside, and since I had gone in before and was stocked up enough on charms and stones and such, I had no need to go in either. The old woman at the counter smiled in welcome at my sister and gave me a more familiar, warm smile of hello, which I returned in kind. I always made sure to visit the bookstore at least once every summer. Bella seemed determined to find a regular bookstore, despite there not being one, and meandered through the streets, which was filling up with end-of-the-workday traffic. I felt my body becoming more and more tense as I allowed Bella to get us lost. I knew I could prevent what was about to happen. I could snap Bella out of it and just lead us back to safety, but this was a necessary and important event for Edward and Bella to get closer. It was needed. I was only there for extra insurance. Despite the fact that I knew Bella would be alright, even without my presence, I couldn't bring myself to ignore my second lifetime of protecting Bella, no matter if the threat was herself or something else. The grip on my bag tightened until my knuckles were bone white, when I spotted 4 men turn around the corner Bella and I were headed for. They were young adults, only a few years older looking than us. No doubt reckless and unquestionably dangerous. They immediately had me on edge. They were joking loudly among themselves, laughing raucously and punching each other's arms. Bella and I scooted as far to the inside of the sidewalk as we could to give them room, I stood as a buffer between Bella and the group as we walked swiftly, looking past them to the corner. "Hey there," one of them called as they passed, obviously addressing us, as we were the only ones around. I stiffly looked to them, Bella glancing up automatically. Two of them had paused. The other two were slowing. The closest, a heavy-set, dark-haired man in his early 20s, was the one who spoke. "Hey," I replied, in a bland, seriously not interested tone. Not that it seemed to dampen their mood any. If anything, their small grins grew wider. Bella and I quickly looked away and walked faster toward the corner. They were laughing at us at full volume, and it made my blood rush with anger and adrenaline at the danger we were being herded to. "Hey, wait," one of them called after us again, but we just kept going and rounded the corner. Bella doing so with a sigh of relief, but I knew it was far from over. The sky seemed to darken with my mood as I tried to calm myself, trying to think of Jasper and how safe I felt with him when Bella started at realizing that two men from the group before were following behind us from a distance. I wished I could give Bella reassurance through touch, at least hold her hand, but I needed both hands if I had to resort to fighting back. I couldn't help it when I could hear my quickened heartbeat in my ear, the silence heavy as we were herded right where they wanted us, and I had to keep myself from yelling profanities at them when I heard the same man from before speak first again. "There you are," the voice boomed. "Yay," a voice from in front of us answered, making poor Bella jump, not that my stiffening was any better. "We just took a little detour." Bella and I slowed, nearing to a stop as she took in the situation. Preparing to scream as I discreetly slid my hand into my bag, my fingers curling around the taser I had so carefully put in earlier. Bella quickly took off her purse, preparing to offer it or use it as a weapon, whatever was necessary. The parent leader shrugged away from the wall as we came to a stop and walked slowly into the street. "Stay away from us," I warned in a very venom-filled and angry tone, not letting my fear show. Trusting in what I knew would happen, Bella glanced up at me with some awe and respect, no doubt because of how firm and controlled my voice sounded. "Don't be like that, sugar," he called. The raucous laughter started again behind us, and I let out an impressive growl. "You're going to regret this," I told them darkly, preparing to fight tooth and nail in the slim chance that they wouldn't appear. The man seemed about ready to scoff and taunt me when the amazingly relieving and familiar appearance of headlights suddenly flew around the corner, the car almost hitting the stocky leader, forcing him to jump back towards the sidewalk. Bella dove into the road, obviously wanting the car to stop, or hit her, and making me want to slap the back of Bella's head. The silver car unexpectedly fishtailed around, skidding to a stop with the passenger door open just a few feet from Bella. I could see golden eyes look at me with uncertainty within the darkness of the car, almost smothered by the unbridled rage. "Don't worry, I had Jasper follow you today. I'm safe." I sent him the message silently, and his eyes widened slightly when he saw a familiar figure seem to materialize behind me. I knew immediately when he appeared, feeling the breeze from his silent entrance and the blanket of safety and calm that washed over my erratic emotions. Bella looked to me quickly, apparently having expected me to be right behind her, worry in her eyes, only to have it melt away to shock and relief when she saw Jasper standing behind me. "Get in," Edward's furious voice commanded. Bella jumped into the seat immediately and slammed the door shut behind her, after sending me one last reassuring glance, somehow knowing I was as safe with Jasper as she felt with Edward. I was about to turn and address Jasper, or at least hide behind him, when I felt a heavy wave of lethargy and exhaustion flood me and send me into a sleepy trance. My eyelids shut of their own accord, and I felt myself fall into the cold, hard arms of my boyfriend before I completely slipped into unconsciousness. I could feel myself waking up, the heavy blanket of lethargy and exhaustion from before lifting gently. I pouted before even opening my eyes and let them open, immediately zooming in on the tall vampire cradling me in his arms. "Was that really necessary?" I asked, with my pout still in place, sitting up in his lap and discovering that we were in the back seat of his Jaguar. My playful pout turned to a serious frown when I noticed how stiff Jasper was. The first powerful vestiges of guilt blossomed and tightened in my chest when I saw how upset, how angry he looked. "Why didn't you tell me?" he bit out, seemingly trying not to sound too harsh. I flinched anyways. I looked down guiltily, but I didn't regret my choice. "It had to happen, Jazz," I murmured softly. I let myself relax against him when his arms tightened around me. "But why didn't you tell me?" he repeated, his voice this time, hoarse and low, choked with emotion. "You were in danger, Madeline. They could have hurt you," he bit out in loathing and desperation. I clung to him, hoping to reassure him with my proximity. "This was necessary," I whispered. Bella was going to get lost on her own if I didn't come, and I've been protecting Bella all her life. I wasn't going to abandon her now. Besides, my grip shifted from around his waist to around his neck, letting my head fall in the juncture of his neck. I knew you would protect me. I'd already seen that Edward would save Bella, but I couldn't risk it. I pleaded for him to understand. He stayed stiff and silent for a moment before he sagged back into the seat. That's why you told me to follow Edward today. I nodded into his neck, not daring to look up yet. And why you told me to think on my priorities, he murmured. I said nothing. You were worried I would kill those men and endanger our existence, he reasoned out, trying to calm himself. You had faith that I would put your safety before my desire to tear them apart. I snuggled into his neck, taking a deep, calming breath, letting the event that happened slip by me as I focused on the present, and idly thought of the future. You were right, he murmured. I smiled, and I knew he could feel the action on his skin. You always seem to be right, Jasper mused in a lighter tone, his somber mood seeming to lift a little, as he allowed himself to bask in the warmth I was feeling just by being with him. Of course, I answered haughtily before I answered more seriously. I trust you, Jasper, with my life. I wouldn't have blamed you for killing those men. I would have even approved, but I didn't want to put your family at risk, and I didn't want you blaming yourself for it. He raised a hand to caress and cup on cheek, making me look at him. You seem more intent on my overall well-being than that of my family, Jasper observed. I only smiled at him warmly. That's because you're the most important to me, Jasper. I love my family and yours, I really do. But my feelings for you are very different. My smile turned more playful, but you should already that. I nearly beamed at him when he gave me a warm smile in return, happy that I pulled him out of his anger and self-loathing. I do, very much so, especially when I feel the same. I felt my cheeks heat up with joy at his soft proclamation and arched up when he leaned down, his intentions clear. Our lips met naturally, as if they were never meant to be apart. We had a lot of practice with how much we made out as soon as we became a couple. We moved in perfect synchronization with each other, my head tilting just a tad to the side, Jasper combing his hand behind my ear till he gently cupped the back of my head, my shifting in his lap until I straddled him without disrupting the kiss. All of it was very natural by now. He lightly bit my lower lip and plunged in when I gasped at the action, my gasp melting into a mewl much as my body melted into his. Let it be said that neither Jasper nor I were as hesitant about touching each other and getting intimate as Edward was with Bella. I trusted Jasper completely, which included his control, and Jasper had enough self-discipline to trust it as well. Or maybe he just couldn't resist touching me. I like to think it was a little of both. I moaned when the hand around my waist lowered to cup my ass, his other hand joining it as he nipped and kissed from my lips down to my collarbone. Our heavy kissing and fondling session went on for a good bit longer before Jasper pulled back, albeit reluctantly. We should postpone this for a more suitable environment, I pouted, knowing he was right, despite the lust-clouded part of my brain telling me I didn't care. I'd rather our consummation be somewhere more comfortable. His eyes bored into mine before lowering to my neck, his lips soon following. Somewhere I could take my time, he breathed into my exposed collarbone, making me shiver. Somewhere much roomier, he nipped at the hollow above my collarbone. My response a sharp intake of breath. Sounds good, I managed to breath out shakily. He pulled back with a chuckle at my response, to which I frowned. For now, I think I should get you something to eat and take you home. It was then I belatedly remembered why I was with Jasper in the first place. Oh, right. I'm supposed to be on some girls' night out with Bella, Angela, and Jessica. I scowled a little when I said the last name, but worried more about what time it was and if it was early enough to make an excuse. With all the worrying I did about the main event, covering for myself afterwards had slipped my mind. Internally, I cursed at myself. This one of the first oversights, first mistakes I had made. I felt Jasper soothe my consternation, his hand rubbing soothing circles on the small of my back. Don't worry, darlin'. I sent Edward a text earlier. He'll cover for us when he and Bella meet up with those two, he reassured. I relaxed against him again, feeling happy and content with how things worked out, humming in appreciation. Have I ever told you how happy I am that you're in the know? I asked him, blissfully content, being by his side. He gave me another of those warm smiles that I loved seeing on his face so much. Multiple times, but it's always nice to be vocally appreciated, and to feel the depth of your elation. I'm sure I've told you just as many times how amazing your emotions feel to me, how much I love to feel your returned affections, he murmured. I only beamed at him and lay my head on his shoulder. You have, I murmured just as softly. I'm glad we understand each other's feelings so intimately, I said more somberly. Jasper was quiet for a moment before he inquired. Do our siblings not share this same understanding? He questioned gently, knowing I don't answer things if I don't want to or don't think it wise. No, definitely not, I said after thinking about it for a moment. They're going to have to go through a lot before both of them don't doubt how much one loves the other. Edward, because he thinks that she can't love him as much as he does, her, and Bella for the same. But also because she doubts her own self-worth, especially being with someone that is so perfect even when not blinded by love. I explained carefully. I felt Jasper shift in concern at one point. You've given me vague ideas of what's to come. Seeing how dangerous some of the events that have already come to pass, I can only dread the more distant but near future events, especially when you mentioned that we may have to separate for a time. I looked up to see him scowling. Just the idea of being apart from you for any large length of time puts me on edge. I smiled reassuringly at him. You won't be gone long, in vampire terms, and we've already planned to secretly stay in contact. It'll be what brings us back together again. Jasper just hummed non-committally. I know you'll be right. I trust you. Those words, more than anything, had a familiar, fuzzy warmth filling my body, spreading from my chest. I suppose it's a good thing that you can hold your breath, I commented as I hurriedly tried to finish the Chinese fast food he had gotten me to eat as neatly as possible. I can't imagine how unappetizing human food must smell with such enhanced senses. I wrinkled my nose as I finished my box and threw the trash in the paper bag. Half the time, food smells too strongly or horribly for me, so I don't know how you deal with it. Jasper rolled down his window and threw the bag into a garbage bin before driving off again. More than a century of practice, darling, Jasper replied easily, making me smile in amusement. What's your favorite color? He asked suddenly. Not that I was all that surprised. I was used to sudden changes in subject, as I was the one who employed them the most. Black. But I am partial to other warm or cool, dark colors, dark red, dark violet, dark blues, coal grays, and the like, I replied, happy that he was asking about my interests. Music? He questioned. Any genre as long as I like the music and lyrics, I responded. Flower? The stereotypical rose. Any color as long as it's a rose, and it has a nice aroma. Is that your favorite scent? He asked. One of the few. I also like lavender, jasmine, eucalyptus, and honey. What was the last Halloween costume you wore? I actually had to think about that one. I remembered my mother's initial insistence that they wear matching costumes like Tweedledee and Tweedledim or Siamese cats or some other matching costume pair, but I didn't stand for that for very long. A witch. I made my own costume last time and I was very proud of it, I answered eventually. Jasper seemed interested in this before he fired another question. Do you practice a religion? For the first time, I hesitated to answer. I don't practice a specific or popular faith, but I'd like to think I'm a spiritual person. I believe in things that cannot be seen, in the supernatural, even before I knew of the existence of vampires, I added, the last jokingly, but continued more seriously. I've never been one to consign myself to a specific set of rules or practices necessary for me to be part of a religion, but that didn't mean I didn't believe in the existence of anything beyond what I can see and touch. I'm not atheist, rather I'm spiritual. I finished slowly as I thought my answer out. He looked thoughtful at my answer before nodding and asking another question. Favorite sweets? I blinked at the sudden shift in question, but wasn't really surprised. A loaded question. I have a few favorites. Flan with whipped cream, strawberries with chocolate or whipped cream, chocolate cake with whipped cream, dark chocolate, chocolate with almonds or peanuts, brownies with vanilla ice cream, and whipped cream and chocolate syrup, chocolate vanilla, chocolate chip, and coffee ice cream with chocolate syrup and whipped cream. That's all I can think of off the top of my head, I hummed. Whipped cream and chocolate, I noticed, are recurring themes, Jasper commented. I only grinned and shrugged unrepentant. Well, they happen to taste good with a lot of things, I defended jokingly, grinning when I made him smile. What places have you gone to? I shrugged again, thinking back. Not many places, most in the country, and on the West Coast. Oh. Well, we did go to vacation somewhere in Mexico once, but it was a tourist hotspot during the summer, so it was way too hot and crowded. I sighed wistfully. Where would you like to go? Jasper asked instead, my eyes brightening at the question. Everywhere, I said excitedly. I've always wanted to travel all over the world, exploring ruins, national monuments, and natural wonders and taking pictures of everything. I want rooms dedicated to things I've gotten from all over, from the most well-known places to the most obscure, even in my previous life, and isn't that a strange thought? It had been my dream to go all around the world, but I had never gotten the chance, and some of the places I wanted to visit, and still do, are too dangerous for a small girl to travel alone. Of course, being small and a girl would be a moot point if you added vampire to that list. I turned to see Jasper smiling at me warmly, a contemplative look in his eye that had me tilting my head curiously. What? His smile only widened a bit as he shook his head in dismissal. Nothing. So, what's your favorite gemstone? The pearls, I responded instantly. No hesitation. This time it was Jasper who tilted his head curiously. Not sapphire, I shook my head. Sapphire is second because it's my birthstone, but I like all other gems pretty equally. Why is opal your favorite? I grinned at the question. Because the smooth oval-shaped ones look like little dragon eggs, don't you think? I grinned at him, making him laugh outright at my reason. Well, that and the color variety is amazing. I could stare at opals for hours, I sighed dreamily, thinking on the mystical little gems. Interesting, Jasper murmured, bringing my attention back to him. I smiled at him. What? No more 20 questions? He hummed. Not really, we've talked about everything else since that first day I drove you to school, Jasper murmured as he pulled in front of my house. I pulled out my cell to check the time and was pleasantly surprised that it was barely 7:30. Oh good, Bella shouldn't get home until half an hour or so. I nibbled at my lower lip as I wondered what I would tell my dad about getting back so early before her. I snapped out of my thoughts when I realized Jasper was looming over me, his arm on the seat behind my head as he leaned down to press our foreheads together lightly. You should tell your daddy we're dating, darlin', he whispered after giving my lips a short peck. I took a deep breath and closed my eyes as I nuzzled our noses a bit, Jasper chuckling at the action. Mun, I think I'll want to stay awake for most of our next date, I murmured. He chuckled again and raised his other arm to brush his thumb against my cheek. Darlin', our first date will be better than a foreseen rescue and Chinese takeout. He paused, then and blinked thoughtfully. At least I hope so. I laughed and kissed him a bit more firmly on the lips, feeling his smile like he no doubt felt mine. See you tomorrow, I breathed as we both pulled back. Nice and early, Jasper promised. How about tonight? Jasper paused at the words, seeming for all the world like he froze, though that was probably just a vampire thing. Tonight? I rolled my eyes. Just to sleep, Jazz. I already know Edward stalks Bella and watches her sleep, which is a creepy thought when it's not you, and you're not in love with your stalker. So I doubt anyone would put up much fuss if I just left my window unlocked at night. I have to warn you, though, I am a cuddler, I teased. Edward will be none too happy if I join him on his nightly excursions. He won't like me being around your sister with how protective he's gotten of her. I scowled and rolled my eyes at that. You're joking, I scoffed. As if him constantly being around his singer is less dangerous than you laying in bed with me. Tell him to shove his concerns where the sun don't shine. The hypocritical asshat, I grumbled, trying to wedge between our budding relationship because he's gotten nowhere with his asshat, Jasper repeated in amusement. I only stuck my tongue out at him in response, unable to help the small smile when he chuckled and kissed the tip of my nose. I never said that his disapproval would stop me, Jasper whispered with a rakish grin, the sight making my heart skip a beat. I hummed in approval and grinned as I gave him a quick hug goodbye before getting out of the car and skipping up to my door, easily unlocking the door and stepping inside. I'm home, I practically sang as I noticed Jasper speeding off when I closed the door. Maddie, I should have guessed you'd be home early. Who'd you get a ride from? Of course my dad wasn't surprised that I came home early. I usually do whenever I go out with friends, since I burn energy fast in company and recuperate it by being alone or in silence. A true introvert, though, a rather cheery one. Of course, Charlie was usually the one to pick me up from said outings, so his question was a good one. Yeah, about that. You know that friend that's been driving me to school lately? I asked as I took off my coat and folded it over my arm, walking into the living room where Dad was watching a baseball game. Yeah? He asked suspiciously. Yeah, well, I met up with him and his brother when Bella and I split from the group, and he was happy to take me home after buying me some takeout, I answered. Him? Charlie repeated. Yeah, we're officially dating now, I believe, I mused. And who is him exactly? Charlie pressed. Jasper Cullen, or Hale, or Whitlock, whichever. I waved my hand carelessly. Cullen? Isn't he a little old for you? Charlie asked. I rolled my eyes at him. No, Daddy, he's only a year above me, and he's the tall, lanky one with honey brown hair. The bulky one is already dating someone, and the youngest is too broody for my tastes. I grinned and slung my arm around his shoulder. You should be lucky I didn't go for someone older like a businessman in his early 30s, since my preference is mature or older guys. I kissed his cheeks and glided up the stairs laughing as he spluttered at my words. Good night, Daddy. After that, I went to my room, grabbed my necessities, and went straight to the bathroom for a quick shower, humming happily on my way back to my room in a long-sleeve, wide-collar, wool-black shirt that slipped off my slim shoulders and low-riding soft cotton plaid gray sleep pants, as I dried off my hair with a white fluffy towel. I didn't even react to seeing Jasper leaning casually against the headboard of my bed, reading the book I'd left on my bedside, The Art of War by Sun Tzu, instead throwing my towel on my desk chair and throwing myself onto the bed next to where he sat, curling up and cuddling against the large fluffy comforters and soft pillows, looking up to see Jasper watching my actions in amusement. You curl up like a kitten, he teased. I only grinned and proceeded to wrap myself up in my sheets and comforters before squirming and rolling over to his side until I was snug against him. And I wrapped myself like a burrito, I added cheerfully. Jasper chuckled and put the book aside, scooting down to lay fully on the bed and wrap his arms around me. Layers and all. My cute burrito, he breathed affectionately. Yours, I agreed, yawning and snuggling closer as I allowed myself to be lulled to sleep by the soft rumbling of Jasper's chest as he hummed. Maddie, wake up! I woke with a start, shooting straight into a sitting position, eyes wide and disoriented, until my eyes focused on Bella in the dim room, a glance to the side, enough to see that my bed was empty, save for the two of us. Jasper must have heard her coming. What? What is it? I asked through a yawn, slumping tiredly from where I was still wrapped in blankets. How much do you know? Bella asked. I yawned again, unable to stop it. About what? The Cullens, she urged, making my eyes sharpen and back straighten a bit. So you finally figured it out? I asked curiously, thinking about that whole three things she was absolutely sure about. That the Cullens are vampires and we're both interested in the two currently available right now. Is that what you mean? Bella asked rhetorically. Yeah? I replied easily. Then yes, I have. Bella all but hissed at me, making me raise my hands in a placating manner. All right, don't get your panties in a bunch. Yeah, I knew since Jasper told me the day after the car accident when he first drove me to school. And why didn't you tell me? Bella demanded. I frowned at her and crossed my arms. It wasn't my secret to tell, Bella, I answered firmly. She glared at me for another few moments before relenting with a heavy sigh and slumping. You're right. I'm sorry. It's just a lot to take in, she mumbled tiredly, rubbing her temples with eyes closed. I snorted and leaned back on my headboard. Yeah, we're both dating vampires who happen to be adoptive brothers. Go figure. I grinned when Bella groaned at my response and smacked her forehead. You know what? I think I'll better use my time to sleep than try to pull answers out of you. It's like trying to pull teeth. I swear, she muttered as she crawled out of my bed. I snickered on the inside as I tilted my head curiously at her, eyes wide and innocent. What do my teeth have to do with anything? I asked, acting bewildered. Bella only huffed and raised her hands in exasperation as she stomped quietly out the door, allowing me to snicker openly after the door shut and Jasper to once more crawl through the window and into bed next to me. That was a bit mean, darling, Jasper whispered in amusement as he snuggled back up to me. Yeah, but that doesn't make it any less funny, I replied, grinning softly as my eyes began to droop once more. True. Jasper held me tighter in his embrace as another yawn escaped mine. Sleep, darling, I've got you. I nodded once. Bon. Good night, Jazz. Sweet dreams, he purred into my ear as I slipped easily back to sleep, lulled by the sense of peace and safety I always felt around Jasper. I wasted no time showering and getting dressed when I woke to Jasper gone, leaving a note on the bedside table to tell me that he'd left to change and come pick me up. More goth casual was my theme today since it was chilly, so I went with a black tank top with stripes of fabric applications and chrome rivets detail under a transformable black grungy print coat with leather look shoulder applications and scorpion motif applications on the sleeves. A quick breakfast and note later, and I was carefully making my way down the foggy driveway, waving cheerfully at the silver Volvo waiting for Bella, and skipping towards Jasper's Jaguar by the sidewalk, sending a greeting and farewell remark to Edward as I hopped into Jasper's car. You should check out Bella in gym today to give you a taste of your future. She's something of a hazard to herself and everyone around. I'll happily pass the baton of her protection to you now. I chirped in my head as Jasper looked at me in amusement. What'd you think to him? Edward suddenly got crabby. Jasper smirked. I gave him a hint of his future, I hummed as Jasper pulled out onto the road. He only chuckled when I told him about Bella's general clumsiness and lack of athletic ability, and more or less what would happen to her in gym today. So you're giving him fair warning that keeping Bella safe will be a full-time job. I shrugged. I thought it only fair. Besides, it's not like he wasn't going to cheat and peek for himself without my saying so. Edward really needs to learn the meaning of privacy. I frowned petulantly. Jasper only chuckling again at my response. I smiled when Angela was the only one brave enough to approach me after Jazz walked me to my first class and kissed me openly in goodbye. Sure, neither of us had done much to hide our attraction for each other, what with me climbing all over him like a jungle gym during lunch. Not sexually, mind you, and him always having an arm around my shoulders or waist, or at least my hand in his, and occasionally kissing my temple or the top of my head. But we'd never shown more PDA than that since we liked to keep more intimate moments private. Not that I minded him giving me a peck. Goodbye, but it certainly cemented the fact that we were officially dating to the nosy onlookers. Hey, Angela. I'm sorry about ditching early yesterday. I apologized to my human bestie, smiling brightly when Angela only smiled at me warmly and shook her head at my nonchalance over the scene. Jasper and I had caused with that small action. Don't worry about it. Bella told me that Edward and Jasper met up with you yesterday, and that he took you home first since you don't like going out in groups much, she replied, understanding in her eyes before they twinkled mischievously. So are you and Jasper officially a couple now? Everyone's been wondering for weeks since the day of the car accident. I tilted my head curiously as we took our seats. Really? I thought it would have been the day I sat on his lap at lunch, I mused aloud as I took out my notebook. Angela only giggled. No, it was way sooner than that. Didn't you see the way Jasper looked at you after the accident? It was so intense. She blushed, seeming to remember the feelings from the memory. I wish a guy would look at me like that. It was like nothing else existed. Angela whispered in awe. He never left your side for a second, and he was never further than arm's reach of you. Before, you two seemed to just like each other. But after that, it was like you became his whole world, she finished softly. I couldn't help the flush that came over my cheeks at Angela's sincere words, covering my face with both hands and peeking up at her through slim fingers. Wow, it's kind of embarrassing when you say something like that so frankly, I murmured as I tried to calm my erratic heartbeat. Angela flushed then, as well as she seemed to realize what she'd said. Oh, I'm sorry. That was pretty sappy, huh? She curled in on herself, laughing nervously and twirling a strand of her hair between her fingers. No, it was really nice to hear, trust me, and I definitely feel that way about him, but I didn't expect someone to outright say it. Not that I mind. I love blunt people. I smiled teasingly when Angela flushed again. This time secretly pleased and embarrassed. I felt my expression soften as I took in her shy stance. You'll find someone who looks at you like that, Angela. It'd be impossible for you not to. You're so sweet and shy and pretty. I'm honestly amazed guys aren't falling over themselves to get you for themselves already. I know I would if I were a guy, or if I were inclined towards my own gender, I admitted honestly, making her face turn red. I grinned teasingly then and dramatically placed a hand over my heart. The other flipped so the back of my hand was pressed against my temple as I leaned back. Alas, sweet maiden, 'tis tragedy my heart belongs to another. Yet were it not so, this unworthy knave would yearn for your heavenly soul to tame the blaze of my contemptuous existence. I took her hand in mine and looked at her seriously, intensely. So would you have been to my thoughts as food to life, or as sweet seasoned showers are to the ground? If I profane with my unworthiest hand this holy shrine, the gentle find is this. My lips two blushing pilgrims, ready stand to smooth that rough touch with a tender kiss. I breathed. pressing a kiss just above the air of the back of her hand, looking up at her intensely. Maddie, Angela stuttered, and I couldn't hold it in anymore, bursting out laughing and giving her a hug, having seen how amazingly effective my seduction actually worked on her. I actually felt her heart speed up through the pulse in her wrist. "I'm sorry, Angela. I couldn't help myself," I gasped as I pulled back to smile warmly at Angela's red face. "I totally wasn't teasing about going after you if I didn't have Jasper was a guy, though." I grinned. Angela huffed, but still gave me a small smile as she composed herself. "Goodness, Maddie, I think it's a good thing you were born a girl. Otherwise you would have broken girls' hearts left and right with that charm," she sniffed, though she smiled again and giggled when I laughed at her words. "Shakespeare?" was the first thing out of Rosie's mouth when I sat down on Jasper's lap at lunch. I gasped dramatically, eyes wide as I looked absolutely shocked. "Who told you?" I breathed. Rosie only scoffed and rolled her eyes as Emmett let out his booming laugh. "I can't believe my little sis knows how to seduce girls better than grown men," Emmett snickered. "Should I be worried about competition from that sweet maiden and heavenly soul?" Jasper purred into my ear, arms wrapping around my waist to pull my back flush to his chest. I gave a purr of my own as I tilted my head and nuzzled my cheek against his as he rested his chin on my small shoulder. "Those lines that I before have spoke do lie, even those that said that I love others dearer," I murmured back. Jasper hummed, pleased as he pressed a kiss to my cheek. "I don't think that's quite what it said," Rosie Early remarked with a smirk. I shrugged. "I took some artistic license to suit my needs," I replied without shame. "How do you even know Shakespeare lines?" "I know you said you liked reading it, but I doubt many fans bothered to memorize it," Emmett asked. I shrugged again, smiling. "I just happen to like very specific lines of certain plays and sonnets. I'd love to be able to recite everything Shakespeare word for word, but I'm lazy and only have a good memory when it conveniences me." I smirked, Emmett chuckling at my response. "Are you still coming over on Saturday?" Rosie asked suddenly, surprising me a bit. Yeah, my plan hasn't changed," I half-stated, half-asked, wondering at her question. Rosalie only shot a glare at the table where Edward and Bella were speaking. "I'm only asking because I wasn't sure how you felt about your sister's plans," she scowled, and my eyes lit with understanding. Shooting a curious glance at Jasper as to why he hadn't told her yet. He only gave me a shrug of his own. "Slipped my mind," he replied to my silent inquiry. "Don't worry, Rosiali. The visions have solidified by now. Bella's in no danger of being killed, and therefore in no danger of exposing your secret," I assured soothingly. Her scowl only grew deeper as she crossed her arms. "Her existence is a danger to us. With how she clings to Edward, his feelings for her don't change the fact that she's his singer," she growled. I tilted my head curiously at her hostility towards my twin. "Aren't I a danger to your family as well?" I asked curiously. Emmett and Jasper only watched silently as Rosie looked at me in contemplation. "No, you have a secret of your own to hide and have done nothing but help us with it to keep our own. Besides, unlike your sister who seems to have no sense of danger or self-preservation, you know the risks that come with being near us, of being as close as you are to Jasper, and are mindful of your limitations. Your twin, on the other hand, is naive in her belief that Edward could never hurt her. She has no caution towards us whatsoever, and is completely disrespectful of our desire to be left well enough alone and not be some teenage mystery to be solved. She has absolutely no self-control. It's disgusting." Rosie spat. The table was silent as I absorbed her little speech. "Well, that's certainly nicer than I expected you to put it. Thank you." 3 pairs of wide, disbelieving eyes turned to me then. "What?" "I can't exactly say it's untrue. I know Bella better than any of you, and while she's pretty mature, smart and level-headed for someone her age, it doesn't mean she's some shamanic wise woman by any stretch of the imagination. She's still young and she still has growing to do. Everyone does, no matter how long they've been alive. There's a reason you learn something new every day is an actual saying," I said frankly. "Besides, I've tried curtailing Bella's more annoying traits like her insatiable curiosity towards others' private business, her stubbornness in the face of logic, and her own well-being or the well-being of others. She's not a bad person, but she often forgets other people's feelings in her quest to find the truth or to be seen as strong and independent." I blinked and paused in my analysis of Bella's character when I saw the 3 Cullens at the table staring at me. "What? Was it something I said? I asked, starting to wonder if there was something on my face. Have you met Carlisle yet? Emmett asked, grinning. I have a feeling the two of you would get along. It's hard to take your sister seriously when you go all Yoda-wise on us like that. You just seem so much more mature and aware than her, that it makes her seem like a spoiled brat in comparison. Jasper replied in explanation. Her twin is a spoiled brat either way, Rosier scowled. The only true wisdom is in knowing you know nothing, I quoted Socrates. You can learn a lot living by the philosophy that you never stop learning, and what you know can change every day. Yeah, Carlisle is definitely gonna love you, Emmett laughed. The rest of the school day was rather uneventful, though Angela did send me concerned notes when she saw how strangely Edward and Bella were reacting to each other during the video. Mr. Banner played. I almost laughed out loud at her, well-meaning inquiries, snickering quietly when Edward glowered at me when I chanced to glance to see their awkward behavior for myself, having read my teasing thoughts. If you don't like what I think, don't look, I thought smugly, smirking when he scowled at me before returning to whatever the hell he was doing with Bella. His family may be used to him constantly invading their privacy, but it was something that was going to take a hell of a long time for me to get used to, amazing adaptability or not. I was further amused in gym when I witnessed Bella's spectacular performance for myself, taking my time changing in the lockers after class so I wouldn't have to run into the awkward couple. What I was not expecting was to be ambushed by Tyler, meaning that he was indecisive till now or that he made a last-minute decision. Obviously, this could be nothing good. Tyler, what a surprise to see you, I said blandly, after getting over the shock of him ambushing me. Yeah, we haven't talked much since the day of the accident. We haven't talked at all, I thought dryly. But I'm hoping to fix that, he said, grinning in what I could only assume he thought was a charming, flirty manner, but came off as sleazy. I resisted the urge to roll my eyes. I was wondering if you'd go to the dance with me on Saturday. I raised a brow at him and crossed my arms, scowling darkly on the inside. Didn't he already ask Bella to the dance? Thanks, but no thanks. I already have other plans, so I'm not going to the dance. Didn't Eric tell you that? As far as I knew, the two were friends, or at least friends enough that Eric told Tyler of Bella's rejection in the book. I didn't see why it would be different now. Yeah, he did mention it, Tyler admitted, making me frown. But I was hoping you were letting him down easy. My frown immediately turned into a scowl at his words. I did let him down easy, because Eric's a good guy, but I'm not interested in him that way. I wasn't going to be a bitch to him for asking me out. I near growled at him. He frowned then. You're being kind of bitchy now, he pointed out. One hand moved to my hip while the other rubbed the back of my neck as I looked up in exasperation, not even deigning to feel insulted. That's because you're annoying me, I replied bluntly, completely honest and sincere. Sorry, he said rather unapologetically. Maybe I can take you to prom instead then, he proposed it as an offer, but it sure as hell sounded more like a statement. Someone clearing their throat shifted both our attentions before I could snap at the boy. I absolutely beamed when I saw that it was Jasper, glaring menacingly at Tyler and towering impressively over him with his height advantage. Jasper! I greeted enthusiastically, jumping into his arms and wrapping my own around his neck. He gave my cheek a greeting kiss and wrapped an arm around my waist as I slid back down onto the ground, not once breaking his glare towards Tyler. I only grinned at his possessiveness and turned back to Tyler, my grin turning a bit vicious at his very frightened expression. Jasper must be using his gift. If you haven't already heard, I'm currently dating Jasper right now. Exclusively. So, if anyone's taking me to any dances or dates in the future, it's gonna be him. Sorry. This time it was my turn to sound completely unapologetic. Jasper spoke next, not giving Tyler a chance to reply. I'll let you off the hook this time, Crowley, for hitting on my girlfriend since you may not have known we were dating yet. Jasper started casually before his expression darkened. Tyler's eyes opening wide with terror, but if you hit on her again after this, you and I are going to have a problem. Understood. He intoned darkly, smirking and returning to his more casual countenance, when Tyler nodded fiercely in agreement. Good. I just gotta go. See you later, Tyler. Managed to stutter out before nearly tripping over himself as he scuttled away, making his escape. Jazz, did you use your gift on him? I asked suspiciously, as we started walking to his car. Jasper only grinned sharply at my question. Maybe a little bit. Jazz, shame on you for using your gift on a helpless human. I reprimanded teasingly, smacking his arm, though it was half-hearted at best, as I laughed, having found the entire scene meaning. Jasper only chuckled at my response. He opened the door for me like a gentleman, making me smile, my smile turning into a gasp as a vision hit me. My hand flew to the frame of the door to steady myself at the unexpected scene playing out before my eyes, blocking my sight of the school parking lot. I felt Jasper's hand on my elbow steadying me as Billy and Jacob pulled into the driveway of my house, rain pouring down over them. The vision melted back into my view of the parking lot and a very concerned Jasper. "Are you all right?" "What just happened?" he asked in a low tone, helping me to sit as if I was about to faint. For all I knew, I really looked like I was. "I just had a vision," I breathed, regaining my composure as I took in the fact that I spaced out like Alice did when she had visions. It's never happened before, but it might be because all the visions I've had were small events, or I've had visions in my dreams or when I was alone and inactive, so I wouldn't be able to tell if I was spacing out or not. "Billy and Jacob Black are going to come over tomorrow." Jasper stiffens before closing my door after I buckle in and rushed over to the driver's side. He glances over as he starts the engine. "Is Billy going to cause you any trouble?" I furrow my brow as I thought on his question. "I don't think so," I replied hesitantly. "But," he urged on, "but I may take this opportunity to kindly tell him to shove his prejudice opinion where the sun don't shine before he gets a chance to voice it," I replied sweetly. Jasper didn't seem amused by my response like he usually would be. I put a gentle hand on his shoulder and gave him a soft smile when he turned to me. "Don't worry so much, Jazz. Jacob isn't one of them yet, and Billy can't properly warn me away from you with Charlie there. I'll be safe. Annoyed, but safe." Jasper let out a frustrated sigh as he pushed his hair back with his fingers. "I know I just don't like anyone from the reservation being near you. It was hard enough for me to keep from saying anything about you going to the beach." Now this actually took me by surprise since he had never given any indication of disliking the idea at the time. I probably should have guessed with how good of an actor he is and knowing how he views the wolves as a threat. I don't like being around them either, because they're prejudiced old farts and brash, loud, immature, hormonal, narrow-minded wolf teens. They'd at least be tolerable to me if they didn't hate vampires without question and cause my gift to go blind, so to speak. I frowned, thinking back on my fervent love of wolves before I realized that the magical shape-shifting wolves that existed were bigoted jerks with only one or two exceptions. My love of all things wolf-related reluctantly, but quickly withered with that revelation. Jasper seemed to take in a breath of relief before slowly letting it out as he pulled up beside my house. "It's a relief to know that you feel that way. I had thought being childhood friends with the Black and Clearwater kids would have meant you would want to spend time at the reserve," he admitted. "I've kept in contact through email with them and can still do so. But Leah's turned into an understandably insufferable bitch because Sam, her ex, imprinted with her best friend or cousin or something. Emily, Jacob's too infatuated with Bella for me to want to hang out with him, and Seth is a cute kid, but I'd rather not have to deal with any raging male hormones if I can avoid it. I don't do well with the average brand of teenage drama and angst." I muttered the last part more to myself than him. "Yes, I can feel how uncomfortable it made you just to explain to me why you drifted from your Lockbush friends," Jasper replied, amused. "Is it because it sounded like the plot in a cheesy teen romance novel?" he teased, startling a surprised and genuine laugh at just how spot on he was with that comment. "That's exactly what it sounds like, though I imagine that Bella and Edward would make for a better main plot couple. The Lawpush drama would be a subplot," I stated decisively, making Jasper chuckle. "And us? Do we not fit the criteria of teen romance couple?" he asked, playing along. "I don't think we have quite enough conflict going on between us for us to categorize as a cheesy teen romance drama. There's a surprising lack of emotional drama that I quite enjoy," I mused, thinking that my relationship with Jasper would make for boring reading since it seemed to amount to adorable but pointless fluff at this point. I suppose it would get more juicy when I tell him about Paul and the whole James thing, kind of. I can't exactly say I'm entirely disappointed by that either," Jasper said with that heart-stopping smile of his, snapping me out of my trailing thoughts. "Don't get too comfortable. I'm sure life will throw some drama our way now just to screw with us," I warned, not entirely joking, but still allowing myself to grin when Jasper only chuckled in response. The night was uneventful as I snuggled into Jasper, another habit that was quickly forming among many I didn't mind. I was amused to wake up to a text from Jasper after he left, telling me the exact number of times Bella muttered Edward's name in her sleep, making me give out a laugh before I slapped a hand over my mouth, remembering that I got up earlier than the other two occupants of the house. I hummed quietly to myself as I changed, going more casual goth and carefully choosing my accessories since I doubted I'd be able to tell Billy to back off quite yet. So a subtle screw you would have to do for now. I wore a simple black tank top under an equally black oversized sweater that had the large dripping white letters of RIP printed on the front and hid the distressed rivet skull shorts beneath. Never one to show skin unless I really had to. I wore one of my large collection of tights, leggings, pantyhose, or high socks, these being rose print pantyhose with lace, peep-toe ankle boots, coffin drop earrings, a silver bat ear cuff, a passion bracelet, and a Dreckel's mirror pendant finished off the look. Sure, half my accessories would be hidden by my sweater, but it was mostly for my own satisfaction than defiance against Billy, since I sincerely doubt he'd really understand the subtle middle fingers I was sending him. He'd probably be more focused on the glaring FU my sweater was giving him. Well, I looked forward to his disapproving looks, all the same. Charlie fishing eggs out of the fridge jarred me out of my light mood with mild surprise. I probably shouldn't have been, since there was the rare occasion that Charlie got up early to make himself a simple breakfast. I recovered quickly and cheerfully smiled at him as I pulled my own cream cheese out of the fridge to spread on my plain bagels, not wanting to keep Jasper waiting too long. "Good morning, Daddy. The frying pan's in the top right cabinet next to the stove," I informed, amused. You could tell that he didn't exactly use the kitchen much. He gave me a look of relief as he fished out the elusive kitchen utensil. "Thanks, Maddie." It was quiet for a moment as I spread the cream cheese on my bagels, and Charlie sifted through the drawers after turning on the stove. "So are you going to the dance with your boyfriend?" I hid a smile as I took out a glass and poured milk in it. "No. The spatula's in the left drawer beside the sink, Dad." He smiled sheepishly as he finally managed to find it before processing my answer and frowning. "Why not? Didn't he ask you?" He sounded upset. "He did ask me out, just not to the dance, since I'd told him that I didn't want to go if Bella wasn't." Charlie settled immediately. Oh, then his eyes sharpened. "Do you know where you're going?" he questioned, glancing back at me as he poured cooking oil into the pan. "Yeah, he's taking me to meet his parents. We're gonna hang out at his house." I could swear I heard his neck crack when he whipped his head to me. "He's already taking you to meet his family." "I already know most of his family. I sit with them at lunch. I'm friends with Rosie and Emmett." I wisely did not mention Edward. "Dad, you're putting in too much cooking oil," I snickered as his head whipped back to his task, cursing under his breath and sending me a reproachful look. Breakfast after that was uneventful, and I finished it quickly, giving Charlie a quick kiss goodbye before rushing out to greet Jasper as I usually do. With a running hug, and as always, Jasper caught me gently and chuckled. I couldn't help smiling when he nuzzled his cheek along mine, chuckling again when his nose bumped into the coffin drop earring. He pulled back and took in the RIP sweater, the coffin earrings, the necklace, and the bracelet before looking back to my face and raising a brow. "Making a statement?" I just gave an innocent smile and played with a strand of my hair. "I have no idea what you're talking about." He only shook his head, smiling, and opened the door for me. I looked up after buckling myself in when I noticed that Jasper didn't immediately close the door like usual, only to see him openly roving his eyes over my tights-clad legs. "Have I told you how much I like it when you actually wear those pretty tights and shoes of yours?" he asked, eyes moving back to my face at a deliberately slow pace up my legs, from the tips of my toes all the way to my thighs before the rest disappeared under my shorts and sweater. I smirked and slowly lifted one leg, letting it brush against the other before crossing them and drawing Jasper's eyes back to where they were before, his pupils dilating and the golden topaz color of his eyes shifting to dark amber. "No, but I'll definitely commit that to memory," I all but purred. Jasper only chuckled again, the sound much huskier than before, making me shiver. "I guess that's another thing I have to look forward to." I stared out, unsure, at the silver Volvo parked in the driveway, holding my sister and her stalker. "You seem confused," Jasper commented, not looking up from my recent bed table book, Niccolo Machiavelli's The Prince. "I am," I confessed, turning back to the window. I didn't realize that I wasn't going to be greeting them outside with Charlie and Bella. I should have known from my vision, though. I crouched in front of the window, pressing my head against the wall beneath, feeling a bit mortified at myself. Embarrassed you built yourself up over such a short meeting, Jasper asked in amusement as he flipped the page. I twitched and buried my head between my legs instead. Don't say it out loud. I really don't want to go downstairs for it now, I muttered, voice strained from the embarrassment. And suddenly, his low chuckle was in my ear, cold to a hair's breadth away from me. I sighed and leaned back into him, curling up and keeping my eyes closed. So, even you're capable of making mistakes, he teased. I frowned, rebouted. The vision was misleading. What was the point of giving me that as the first vision of its kind I experience if it wasn't even that important? I complained, though I was actually starting to think on it seriously now that I was getting over my embarrassment. Maybe as preparation for future visions that'll be more intense, Jasper theorized. I bit my lip at the thought. If that's the case, I'm not exactly looking forward to future visions, I murmured. Jasper wrapped his arms more securely around me, blanketing me in safety and comfort. Did you see something bad before your new vision started? I shook my head, staring at the wall, troubled. No, but before my visions changed, I got selfish, I whispered, clinging to the arms around me. Selfish? I nodded and pressed as closely to him as I could. Finally getting to experience the love and happiness I'd been seeing in my visions months before. I won't be able to let you go like I'd seen. Won't want you to leave me, not even for a month, let alone nearly half a year. Jasper sucked in a sharp breath, and my eyes widened in realization at what I'd just let slip, and I bit my lip again, punishingly. His embrace turned from comforting to possessive in less than half a second. Half a year? He breathed out at such a low volume. I wouldn't have been able to hear if he wasn't right behind me. His grip on me tightened a little. I thought you said we wouldn't be gone long, he accused. In vampire terms, I argued weakly, voice soft. Do you realize how difficult it would be to just pretend to leave you? And you're talking about being away from you for months? I know. It's different now, I interrupted desperately. It was ridiculously ideal, but I never wanted to make Jasper angry, because I knew it would take a lot for someone as level-headed as him to get to that dot, and I didn't delude myself into believing it was anything but my fault. Before it was easy to say that I wouldn't change anything and let things happen because the ending was ideal, but looking through a window and experiencing it myself is completely different. Jasper was silent as he took in my words, the only signs of his reaction being a slight loosening of his arms. So that's why your visions changed, he finally said. You went from passively manipulating visions to your advantage, to actively trying changing their outcomes. Therefore, your visions have become far more intrusive. But I haven't even changed anything yet, I replied, flushing a bit when I heard a slight whine in my voice. I felt Jasper's smile when he pressed a soft kiss to my neck. No, but you have full intention to, and your gift acknowledged that, I nodded, frowning, and turned a bit to nuzzle against Jasper's own neck. Now that I have you, I can't just let you go like that, even if it's temporary. I muttered petulantly. Jasper let out a chuckle. Trust me, I wouldn't have left so easily, even if you wanted me to. It was easy living without you when I didn't know you existed. I didn't know what I was missing. Now that I do, why would I let you go? No matter the reason, I smiled and gave him a sweet kiss. My actions and emotions telling him clearly that I shared the sentiment wholeheartedly. I pouted when he pulled away, only to see him tilting his head as if listening to something. What is it? Black and his son are already leaving, he informed. What? I missed it completely, I asked, standing up quickly to look out into the downpour to see Billy looking back to the house and coincidentally looking right into my window. Oh? Jasper asked, standing as well to return to hugging me from behind and catching sight of a now wide-eyed Billy Black. Oh? He saw me, he said flatly. Obviously not caring, I only grinned rather maniacally and tilted my head to give Jasper full access to my neck. My grin widened to an almost baring of teeth at his near horrified expression as Jasper slowly leaned down to press another kiss on my neck, his cool breath fanning over my skin as he chuckled. You're evil, he murmured, but with the way it came out as a near purr. I doubted he actually much minded. I woke quickly, good mood restored, and the embarrassment of yesterday having passed after I nearly gave Billy a heart attack. I'm sure I should have felt a bit guilty about that, given how horrified he looked, but I figured that accepting the whole vampire and shape-shifting business meant he was made of sterner stuff. Besides, that expression was far too hilarious and priceless for me to feel any form of remorse. I hummed and quickly slid on my destroyer top, shallow waters maxi skirt, major swoon platform boots, and hoodie with angel wings on the back. All black, of course. Well, mostly. Good morning, I chirped at Jasper in greeting after giving him my customary flying hug. Morning! Looks like that little scene you made yesterday cheered you right up. It took you longer than usual to fall asleep with how much giggling you were doing, he teased. I gasped, mock-affronted, and smacked his arm. Jasper, I do not giggle. At least call it snickering. Giggle sounds so undignified, I finished in a whisper of horror. Whatever you say, Maddie, he chuckled. The drive to school and school itself passed quickly, and soon enough, it was time for lunch again. A purchase of a bagel, a chocolate chip muffin, and a bottle of iced tea later, and I was once more comfortably seated in Jasper's lap, nibbling away at my snacks. You eat like a bird, Emmett smirked, or a mouse, or a bunny, or a hamster. I get it, I interrupted with a pout. I eat consistently in small bites. I think you got your point across. Emmett's smirk grew to a grin. Just making sure. Yeah, sure, I grumbled under my breath, making Jasper and Emmett chuckle at my sulking. Then, of course, my vision shifted and I saw Jasper, Bella, and I driving home together, and then Emmett and Edward hunting together somewhere. Oh, I huffed out, shaking my head to clear away the slight disorientation. What did you see? Jasper asked softly, his hand rubbing my arm comfortingly and keeping me grounded as I came back to reality. It was actually harder than I thought to get used to these visions. No matter how small they are, my lauded adaptability a bit slow to work here. Nothing much, I just forgot that Bella won't have a ride home today, so we'll have to give her a ride, I murmured before glancing back at Jasper. You don't mind, do you? I suppose this means I can't ravish you on the drive back like I intended, he drawled, his tone flat. His equally flat expression was broken by a smile when I laughed. It's fine, not exactly like I'd be going out of my way. You two do live in the same house, after all. My eyes widened then when Rosie seemed to growl under her breath from seemingly out of nowhere. Told you not to listen, babe. It always puts you in a bad mood, Emmett commented. Did I miss something? And wasn't that unusual in and of itself? Rosie answered my unasked question by turning to glare hatefully at my sister, Bella turning to peek at us. Not a few seconds later and cringing as she caught the full brunt of the piercing gaze. Edward threw his blonde sister a disapproving look, but Rosalie only scoffed and turned away with a regal flip of her hair. Both Edward and your precious little sister disgust me, she verbally replied with a scowl. Ah, I answered lightly, not fazed. Any particular reason, or the same as before? I asked curiously. Besides her usual and completely idiotic ignorance or willful disregard of her own safety and Edward's sickening obsession with her, I honestly don't understand what's so fascinating about her, she said, the word fascinating dripping with mockery. Her looks are average, her grades are nothing special, and she has all the fashion sense, personality, and self-esteem of a suicidal chess club member. I blinked, resisting the urge to vocalize the "would you like ice" for that sick burn comment, knowing that was most definitely not the right response to my sister being insulted in front of me. Of course, confrontation was out of the question as I had no intention of arguing with Rosie. I simply understood that Rosie and my sister did not have compatible personalities. They simply did not get along well unless under very, very, very special circumstances. I doubted the two would have gotten along half as well if it weren't for the events that happened in Breaking Dawn. Before that, Rosalie only begrudgingly respected and accepted her, so, best course of action, divert her attention. Sorry, but do I not classify as boring human? I mean, my grades are worse than hers, which means average. The only fashion I like is black, and my self-esteem has a split personality of narcissistic, plain Jane, and full-on self-depreciating. Emmett started to cough in a sad attempt of masking his snickers before giving it up as a poor job and bursting out laughing. Really? You have self-depreciating thoughts? Jasper asked, half joking, half serious. I shrugged. It's not like I want to. It literally just hits me sometimes. All the negativity, soon enough, one bad thought snowballs into another worse one, then another until I hit full-on depression. It annoys me after I recover, but I've considered and resigned myself to the possibility that it's part and parcel of being a teenager and going through puberty. Emmett laughed harder at my answer. Putting aside your seer gift, you are the farthest thing from boring I've seen in an average high school student. Your fashion sense would be a plus to the interest factor, your tastes even more so, and your personality is far more fascinating than your awkward sister's. Rosalie stated blandly. I shrugged helplessly as Emmett finally calmed down. Bella has her own weaknesses and strengths like I or anyone else does. You've only ever seen her weaknesses, and my biggest strengths. I'm sure some of her future actions and any future mistakes I make may change your opinion more than any argument I can say now. I replied simply, knowing nothing I could say in Bella's defense would help anything. We'll see, Rosie said skeptically. The rest of the day passed in the blink of an eye, the ride home much less eventful than I imagined, and then, not soon enough, I was back to snuggling in bed with Jasper, falling into an easy sleep. Knowing that it would be a bit warmer today, and just who I would be visiting, I decided on a simpler outfit, even if it was still all black. I wore a Sara hood tank dress under a double-breasted, leather-trimmed Duventine wool crepe jacket with a pair of Dolly 50 heels, foregoing any accessories and makeup as usual. I honestly had no idea what I'd be doing today, since Jasper seemed to be constantly flickering between decisions. That intelligent man, him, so I figured it wouldn't matter what I decided on. The soft humming I'd been doing as I walked out the door abruptly stopped when I spotted not a black Jaguar, but a flashy red convertible waiting for me with a very much female blonde driver at the wheel. My thoughts derailed comically to the line, "Get in, loser. We're going shopping," as I recovered myself and continued just as casually as before to the convertible. "Well, this is a surprise," I grinned as I got into the car. "Didn't think I'd have the honor of being escorted to the Cullen home by you. Jasper mentioned that you see less everyday vision since that sudden shift. I guess you don't see small changes anymore unless you actively look for them." I nodded in agreement as she turned the car on. I offered. Jasper was too shocked to say no. I laughed as she pulled onto the road and sped forward. "Well, that's fine with me. This might be to my advantage, actually," I murmured pensively. "In what way?" Rosie questioned a bit sharply. Though I took no offense, it's just the way she was. "Just to check. We aren't currently within hearing distance of the others, are we?" "Not yet," she affirmed readily. Well, I've been meaning to inform Jasper about a sensitive, subject for a while, but have been waiting for the most opportune moment to do so. "Today is finally that day," I hedged. "Spit it out already, Maddie," Rosie pushed impatiently. "There's a wolf." I ignored her low growl. "At the reserve named Paul, who I ran into during one of my summer stays when I was 14, that gained an unfortunate interest in me and has been attempting to force himself on me, since which has admittedly gotten more difficult in the past few summers after he went through his first transformation, and I can't push him away by force anymore." I tiptoed delicately. Rosalie's growl grew to a full-blown snarl, the car going much faster than before. "You mean one of those mangy wolves has been trying to rape you since you were 14? She hissed. "Okay, maybe not the best first person to tell it to, but since she wasn't running off and breaking the treaty now, nor in any visions I considered it safe. Besides, if this is how Rosie reacted, then I was justified in seeking support in numbers when deciding to finally tell Jasper." "Well, I wouldn't exactly have put it like that," I replied weakly, but not wanting to defend Paul in any way, and not entirely positive of the belief that he wouldn't rape me if he had the opportunity. Rosie let out a long hiss before seeming to visibly pull herself together, taking a deep breath, her face becoming stony. "And you're telling me now to help in preparation of Jasper's reaction," her tone as hard as her expression as she spoke. "Well, if your reaction was any indication," I trailed off, managing to pull a small upturn of Rosalie's lips for my response. "While I admit the subject is a sensitive topic for me, I'm sure Jasper's reaction to the news will be worse than you feared. But it was the right choice to tell him when the family is gathered," she said, sounding almost like she was giving me a compliment. "We're reaching hearing distance," she murmured a few minutes later. The rest of the ride was spent in not comfortable but not awkward either. Silence. Rosie had barely parked the car in the garage when my door was opened, and I looked up to see Jasper offering his hand. My amused smile slipped to an expression of gaping disbelief, no doubt, when I spotted what he was wearing. "Oh my goodness. Is that a poet's shirt? Was that even legal? No, that's irrelevant. Of course it should be illegal. It should in fact be a sin, because nothing but the word sinful could describe how good Jasper looked in a poet's shirt." I swallowed, shutting my mouth with a click, knowing that if I could hear my heart beat suddenly rising in excitement at the incredible sight, then everyone else heard it as well. Not that I cared much at the moment, still shamelessly gazing up and down at my hot lover. Boy, was I glad that Edward wasn't around right now, because I'm sure both of us would have been uncomfortable with the dirty thoughts running through my head right now. I snapped out of my daze thanks to Jasper's husky chuckle, making me shiver as I met his smoldering gaze, knowing he could feel just what emotions spiked at the sight of him. I may have looked through a few of those websites you mentioned out of curiosity, of course, and found a thing or two I liked, though most of it was far too gaudy or flashy for me. This was something simple and the closest to my taste. I nodded dumbly before mentally slapping myself and shaking my head to snap myself out of it. I gave Jasper a wicked smirk as I finally took his hand and allowed him to pull me into his arms. I didn't think my style of clothing would suit you either, for the same reasons, but I have to say that the shirt unexpectedly suits you, I murmured, my heart stuttering as I slowly rover my eyes up and down his tall form once more. I had looked through the male selection of clothes for my style before out of curiosity, and I knew that most of it would suit Jasper terribly. So I never gave it a second thought, but of course Jasper managed to surprise me by finding at least one thing that would suit him far too well. You might want to save those thoughts for later. We still have to at least meet my parents first, Jasper teased, whispering into my ear. You look quite lovely, by the way. I don't think I've ever seen your legs without any of those pretty tights of yours when you wear such short dresses, skirts, and shorts. This time it was his turn to freely roam his gaze over me, or more specifically, my exposed legs. I laughed and gave him a joking, warning smack. Now, who's distracted? Come on, introduce me already. I'm sure they won't bite. I laughed when Jasper only rolled his eyes at my horrible joke, giving me a chaste kiss before beginning to lead me to the door that led from the garage into the house. As if you don't already know them, he drawled. It's called being polite, Jasper, I retorted primly, tone haughty. Surprisingly, Jasper wasn't the only one to express his amusement at my remark as we walked in. Emmett was expected with his boisterous laughter, but Esme's giggling and Carlisle's chuckles were a pleasant surprise. Indeed, it's wonderful to finally meet you. Madeline, welcome to our home. Carlisle greeted warmly, arms open wide in the universal sign of welcome.